So I'm doing number 40. This is 40 from chapter 12. I have a mole ratio here. My equation says I have 5 moles of this, 2 moles of that, 1 mole of this, no number in front means it's 1, and 4 moles of this. Alright, so problem letter A says I have 2.7 moles of carbon. Now I don't want moles of carbon. I always cross off my first unit. So whatever I start with here, that's the given. I put the units down there. I never transfer the numbers, just the units. And then I'm looking for moles of something else. I'm looking for moles of CS2. So if I'm in one chemical and I want to get to another, I can do that. That's a multimole ratio. So I want to get into CS2. And I want to get out of C. So a multimole ratio. I just take my numbers, my coefficients from my equation. So for C, my number in front is 5. For CS2, my number in front, CS2, is 1. Cross off my like units. That leaves me with moles of CS2. That's what the question is asking for. How many moles of CS2 are there? And so to summarize, I have 2.7 divided by 5 moles of CS2. And that's going to work out to be 0.54 moles. Just divide that in your calculator. Alright, letter B. Starting off with 5.44 moles SO2. So I don't want moles of SO2, so I'm going to take these units, I'm going to put them down there. Now what can I put on the top? Well, the question says how many moles of carbon do I want? So I can go directly from moles of one thing to moles of another. So I'm looking to go moles of carbon, so I'll put that on top. This is a mole to mole ratio. So now I just take the numbers. Here's SO2, so I go up to SO2. There's a 2 in front. And C, there's a 5 in front. So for this C, I put 5 in front of there. Cross off my like units. That leaves me with moles of carbon. That's what I want. That's what the question asks for, so I know I'm done. So I'm going to multiply everything on top, divide by everything on the bottom, and that's my answer. Letter C says I have 0.246 moles of CS2, and I want to know how many moles of carbon monoxide I have. Okay, so if I end up with this, how many moles of this? This is carbon monoxide because there's no number here, so that's mono, carbon monoxide. So I want to convert this. I want to get out of this CS2. So I'm going to take my units I start with, take these units here, put them down there so they'll cancel. On the top, I'm going to put what I'm changing it to. And in this case, I'm looking for carbon monoxide. Okay, now I have a multimole ratio. I always do the units first before I put the numbers. Now what number goes with CS2? Well, there's no number here, so that means it's 1. What number goes with CO? Well, there's a 4 in front of CO. And I crossed off my like units. And now I'm just going to multiply straight across. And there's my answer for C. Letter D says I start off with 118 moles of CS2. I don't want CS2, so I'm going to put it down here. Okay, now I'm going to a different chemical. They're looking for moles of SO2. So I'm going to put the chemical I'm changing into on top. This is again a mole to mole ratio. So how many SO2s do I have? Well, I have 2 SO2s. CS2, I have 1, because there's no number in front. So this combines in a 2-to-1 ratio. That's what I'm showing here. And I cross off my like units. And just multiply straight across. The problem asks for moles of SO2. That's what I'm left with, so I know I have the right units. Alright, this is 41A. Now I'm going to start off with some grams. Some scientific notation. I'll do it how they have it. 3.6 times 10 to the second grams. Okay, this is an organic compound here, so we don't always put the H's together when we have organic compounds. We'll talk about that later. But anyways, I don't want grams. Let me, I do want to put the formula up here. Okay, sometimes that's important. So I have grams of my methanol, and I don't want grams of methanol, so I'm going to put it down here to cancel it. Now I can only change grams to one thing and one thing only, and that is moles of the same thing. Okay? Grams to moles of the same substance. It's always 1 mole. Grams is always to 1 mole. How many grams? Well, I have to go to my periodic table. I take my formula. I have C. I have H. There's 1 C, 3 H's. There's 1 O. There's another H. I go to my periodic table. I look up carbon. I go to my periodic table. I look up hydrogen. I do the same thing with oxygen and with hydrogen again. And I'm going to add all of these together, multiply across, and then add them together. So my molar mass for methanol is 32 grams per mole. So I'm going to take that number, put it right there. Now I'm going to cross off my like units. I have grams of this stuff and grams of that stuff. So I look at where I'm at, moles of CH3OH, and I see if I'm done. Well, it says how many moles of each reactant do I need? Well, here's one reactant. Here's another reactant. So I have 2 reactants. Alright, so basically I have to do this problem twice. I need to know how many moles of this do I have. So I'm going to do that now. So I don't want this stuff. I do want moles of CO. That's a mole-to-mole ratio. And my equation states a mole-to-mole ratio. So I have moles of CO. There's no number in front, so that means there's 1. And I have moles of ethanol, menthol rather, so that means there's 1. So it's a 1-to-1 ratio. Methanol, not menthol. Alright, so now I'm in moles of CO, carbon monoxide. And I can multiply that out and actually divide that out. 3.6 times 10 to the second. Same thing as 360. Alright, so I have 11.1 moles of carbon monoxide. Now the question said how much of each reactant. So there's one. I finished that one. I have to go back and do the same problem for the other reactant. So now let's go back and do that reactant. So again, I'm starting with my given. Oops, not moles. I'm starting with grams. Of methanol. Okay, I don't want grams of methanol, so I'm going to put it down here. Now grams, I can only change grams to one thing, and that's moles. Grams to moles, and it has to be the same chemical. It's always 1 mole for grams. We already computed this on the last problem, so I'm just going to repeat that, 32 grams. We get that from the periodic table. So now I'm in moles of this stuff. I don't want moles of that stuff, so I'm going to get rid of it. And I do want moles of my reactants. I already figured out that one, so now we're doing hydrogen. Now my coefficients in a mole-to-mole ratio come from my equation. I have 1 of these because there's no number, and I have 2 of the H2s. Okay, again, I'm going to change that to 360. And I know that because 3.60 times 10 to the second. I move that decimal over 2 spaces. So if that number just got larger, that has to get smaller. And 10 to the 0 is 1. So I have 360 times 2. I just multiply everything on top. 360 times 1 times 2. And divide it by 32. So my moles of hydrogen Alright, I'm going to stop this video.